and you were like, Justin, people are worried about you. You're making a lot of noise. Like, you're okay. You've got this. You're a strong person. And then you said, take a deep breath. And I took a breath, and it felt like the first breath I'd taken in 1,000 years. Okay, guys, what's up? It's Justin Kahn. Welcome back to another episode of The Quest. And today I'm really excited. I've got my friend Matthew Stoltz here, who is a curandero, a healer, a very powerful healer in my experience, and also a renegade anthropologist, just a world traveler. It's Matthew and I first met in my very first ayahuasca ceremony, which I've mentioned on this podcast a number of times before, and it was a really powerful experience. You had an experience I've told you several times that really changed my life. You were there for me in this critical moment that I'll always remember, and I'll tell that later. But it's been really powerful to get to know you and to sit with you in the last 3 years. So thank you. First off, thank you so much.
Thank you, Justin. Thank you for just such an honorable introduction. That sounded really good to hear that about myself, and I'm gonna really try to believe that about myself.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for saying that, and let's get into it. I really appreciate being on the show and sharing the little bit that I know about my experiences.
Awesome. Well, I want to bring you on. One, you have like an incredible story, but the second thing is like that I've talked a lot about ayahuasca and plant medicine and the impact it's had on my life in videos, online, and my podcasts, because it's something that I wish I knew existed right before I had the opportunity to experience it. And when it's had a really deep impact on my life, and so I wanted to bring in somebody who is maybe a little bit more expert, right? Because I'm really sitting through the eyes of what I would call an amateur, or like someone who's been through the experience like a couple times, but not. You've sat for over 1,000 or thousands of people now, right?
Yeah. Okay. So I first sat with the medicine when I was 19 and went to Peru.
Yeah.
And then didn't sit again for another 8 years, and kind of like graduated from Stanford, crashed and burned, rebuilt myself in between. And then it's been my life for the last 8 years. So in the last 8 years, I probably sat 500 times, and probably 300 of those times in a role where I was responsible for the group of people.
Yeah.
Whether the shaman, curandero, almost always an indigenous man, or an indigenous Peruvian man, and then, all of the people coming to receive. And then, so over that time, I think roughly I've been responsible for the well-being of about 6,000 user experiences. So I'm not an expert in to the level that, my teachers are, or people really in the Amazon that are doing this for many, many decades. But in terms of understanding what people of our culture go through in these experiences, and kind of the broad strokes and understanding of how this medicine works with us and with our mind, with our body, and my own study with it, I feel like I have a fairly large pool of experience to communicate from, and to try to draw from.
Amazing. I love how you call it user experiences. That's very Silicon Valley of you.
Yeah, I went to school in Silicon Valley.
Yeah. All right. So let's start at the beginning though. I know I made you tell your story a number of times, but just tell me I know you don't the high level overview of how did you come to the place where you got to the point where you were like, I am wholly invested in plant medicine.
Okay. So, oh man, you asked the question so makes me want to share more, but I'll try to give the standing there with my drink, explaining it. So I when I was 19, I went to Peru. When I was 19, I went to Peru, and when I was 16 or 17, I began to break out of the pain of my own mind and through psychedelics and with mushrooms or acid or whatever. And I knew when I went to Peru that I wanted to try ayahuasca. I'd heard about it through this website called Arrowwood.
Yeah.
And my friend didn't want to do it that I was traveling with, but fate has it, the guy who sells us our Machu Picchu hike trek package, tells my friend he's a shaman. My friend believes him. So he brings us into a room where, like in the ghettos of Cusco, I mean, like 3-legged dogs, like poop on street fires, stuff like that, like a little concrete apartment, like completely unfinished. And there's this little old indigenous woman, and she gave us ayahuasca. My friend's like puking the whole night. I barely feel anything until I have this one powerful vision that's like stuck with me. And as with most visions in ayahuasca, it wasn't literal, but it has been a guiding force in my life ever since.
Yeah.
And, but it was just like, it was like 10 minutes that I felt like I felt the medicine.
But what was the vision?
I mean,
Was it too personal to share?
it's personal. Like, I don't want to give the wrong, yeah, it's personal.
Okay.
Like, yeah, I'm going to hold that one back.
All right.
I mean, it really had to do with being like wanting to make right the colonization of the Americas.
Okay.
It was about being like in a relationship to the Spaniards that came and conquered America, or conquered the Americas and conquered these indigenous cultures, and feeling deeply inspired, like a deep moral obligation to work for the indigenous people of the Americas.
Okay.
And to work against that, yeah, it's subtle. I don't want to say the whole vision because it's like very personal, but yeah, so that's been a guiding force for my life. But anyways, like after that ceremony, you know, I'm like on the trek, and I feel like this whole sense of like, oh, I'm human. So like, it's going to be really uncomfortable for me not to like use a toilet to go to the bathroom. Or if I sleep not in a bed, I'm going to like, my body's going to hurt. Or like, whoa, if I'm eating food that's not from a package, it's unclean. Like all these like kind of unnatural thoughts, but that are taken for granted because that's just like what is in the,
like our environment, our
the
modern
baseline
society.
assumptions of our environment, right?
Yeah.
So that began to fall away, and I began to realize like, whoa, I'm not this like separate thing from nature. I'm part of nature. I adapt with nature. I will know myself through understanding nature. And then I had an experience with San Pedro cactus in Ecuador on my own before leaving Peru, where I had that moment of like, I was actually like, I had this whole day where I felt like nothing happened, but I like met this farmer and became friends with him and was convinced I was going to like help and like give him like communist literature, and he was going to organize his other farmers, and like I signed him up for an email account, and like anyways, of course we knew none of that was going to happen, but like I made this like bond with this person, and I was like, oh well, I guess I didn't feel this thing. Then I went back to my like little hotel room, and I turned on the movie Army of Darkness, and like somehow this meant like the San Pedro clicked on, and I had this moment where I'm like, whoa, you can't deny it anymore. God is real. And then lightning struck the building, knocked out all the power, and then it was like torrential rain. And so like I wrote down in my journal, like, you can't deny this. Like, even though you're going to try to, like, all of life is like, there is a spiritual power, you know?
Yeah.
And so I went back to Stanford, and I was in Stanford at this time. I went back to Stanford, and I'm like, I want to understand how indigenous people communicate with nature, like with entheogenic plants. Like there is something real with this, and like entheogenic plants can be a method of communication to a higher realm, to a higher consciousness.
Yeah.
And of course, like everyone at Stanford was like, no way, bro. Like from like
you were trying to study it as a
Yeah.
field, and the professors were like, this is not a valid course of study.
Yeah, I was like, I want to study how indigenous peoples use entheogenic plants to communicate with nature. You know, I want to study shamanism, and particularly where it relates to entheogenic plants. And like just alarm bells went off with anyone I said this to. I think now there'd be more appreciation for that idea, but like they're just like, no, they're like, okay, we get it. You like drugs. No way. To like, here's a card for a psychologist. He's good. I swear, you know, he probably won't lock you up. Just please talk to him. I'm so worried about you.
Yeah.
To the man that was actually my professor, because after this experience, I decided like, well, I want to study anthropology. I want to learn about indigenous people, and particularly learn about colonization, and how indigenous people relate with their environment. Anyways, this professor, who was like the head of the anthropology department for a while, he was my advisor, was like, yeah, okay, I get it. You're just so confused. You're so confused. You want to help indigenous people and nature? The answer is ecotourism. The answer is ecotourism, and you can go and we have the Center for Ecotourism and Sustainable Development here at Stanford, and you can submit an idea for a project, and go to the jungle, which I know that's what you want to do, right? And count monkeys. for a summer. And yeah, that's what's actually going to help. And so like, I obviously didn't buy in. Like I had like no buy-in while I was at Stanford. I was just trying to crack my head open.
Yeah.
And I felt, I guess then you asked like, when did I know that I wanted to, this be my path? That was like when I knew like I'm supposed to be, I would have said the word shaman then. Like I believe that's what I was supposed to do. And then of course I graduate from Stanford. It's the recession and I'm broke and I really should have studied engineering or CS or something. Cause like I apply for 100 jobs, don't get any. I'm like working as a butcher. I get addicted to heroin because I'm like just so depressed and just like have all these egoic bad attitudes and self-destructive personality defects, which are first weren't unique to me. Like so many of us have them.
Yeah.
I was just extreme in the way that I lived them. And yeah, like so I was like, man, dude, you were so crazy. Like just thinking you're supposed to be a shaman or something. Like you just like blew your opportunity. And I beat myself up. Again, trying to cliff notes this like I'm summarizing now, like skipping ahead like 5 years.
Yeah.
Covering 5 years of my life. Yeah, I'm addicted to heroin. I'm living in San Francisco. Secretly, you know, like maintaining jobs or hustles, like squatted a place successfully for 6 months. The cops came to kick me out, but like I was, you know, I was like, I knew the law. So like I had like, I'd like gotten bills in my name and like gotten the internet hooked up to this squat. And the cops were just so frustrated that they couldn't kick me out. They're like, dude, you just beat the system. And they're like, you know, you'd be a really good lawyer someday. As they're like handing me the new keys as they like rekeyed the place.
Yeah.
And eventually it got to a point where I like really melted down. Like I wasn't able to just maintain this like controlled over addiction. And I mean, I melted down. I had a bunch of times where I really could have died. A bunch of times where I thought I was dying. Like I'm in the projects of Potrero Hill, like at this woman Tanya's house in like the upper bathroom, and I feel myself overdosing. Or I'm in the like the Bayview Hunters Point McDonald's in the bathroom, and I feel myself overdosing. Or overdosing in the like lockable bathroom at the women's health clinic at a UCSF at the SF General.
Yeah.
And I feel myself overdosing. I feel these moments, and I'm just like, oh man, my grandma's prayed for me my whole life. Please don't let me die right here.
Yeah.
And it cleared. And, you know, and during this time where I was really melting down, I felt the reality of God. I felt the reality of Christ. I felt the reality of the good trying to help me, and I had no power. I had no power, melted down, went to my parents' house, first my dad's house, and he was just like, what the fuck's wrong with you, dude? Because he didn't know. Yeah. And then my mom kind of also just didn't actually realize something was wrong with me. And then the turning point in my life was right around my 25th birthday. I'm just outside smoking, looking up at the pine trees at my mom's house. And I just said, you know, to God, I'm like, you know, because like during this time, during like addiction, recovery, the detox, like the time of like actually not doing drugs anymore. I mean, I'm having these horrifying dreams every night. I'm like going to the Walmart in these crappy towns and like hoping I'll like find someone that sells drugs. Yeah. Of course, you know, at this point, like my deal was my contract was up. So like didn't find anything like that. And I'm there and I'm just like looking up and I'm just like, God, you know, and this is after a few months of like literally feeling no sort of positive emotions. Mm-hmm. And just like promising every day not to kill myself, promising myself every day that I had to watch the San Francisco Giants. So therefore you can't kill yourself. You got to like, you know, stay alive till 7:00, watch the game. Yeah. But anyways, I just had this moment where I'm like, you know, God, if I know you're there, I don't need anything else. I can live without another girlfriend, another female relationship, any friends. I can live just literally in a cabin and like eating raw deer and like drinking water from a creek and not knowing anything about anything, just knowing that you're there. And I'm going to be good now. I'm not going to think that I know better. Yeah. And I think I'm still trying to live up to that because that's like a lifetime work in progress to not have our mind think we know better than what our deep consciousness of what's right and having that guide us. So, so that was the turning point in my life. After that, went to woodworking school, which like kind of taught me integrity and like relearning tool control, through like controlling the tools and through through sharpening, through like having to be precise, kind of retraining my nervous system and also teaching me integrity.
Yeah.
And then after woodworking school, I just have this moment where I'm like, at just this magic moment. I'm at like a little like place in Topanga where I stayed with a friend after Burning Man. Some people came over for a private concert that my friend, who's a Persian sitar master, was going to do. And there was this black guy and this white guy, and they were like really cool in their late 40s. And I asked them like, hey, what do you guys do? And they're like, oh, we're like landscape architects. We did the landscaping out here. And they're like, so I said, but what we really do is ayahuasca ceremony. And I was like, like, no way. And like, I hadn't thought about ayahuasca for years. It'd been like 8 years. And I was like, oh my God, like I sat 8 years ago and it changed my life. And I had no idea. And they're like, oh, just come. I'm like, I got no money. I'm like living in my van. They're like, definitely just come. Mm-hmm. And I drank the medicine that first night. And I just immediately, and I'm like sizing it up as like, there's like all these, like, it's like we're in the suburbs in LA. And there's people wearing spirit hoods and some people wearing makeup and like, like I'm just like kind of sizing up, like, I don't know if this is my crew, and like, I don't know if these are my people here. They were, of course. But just like kind of sizing it up, and the medicine came on. I began to just feel this inkling of this little voice and just saying like, hey, we love you and you're ready now. Like enough has happened that you've killed enough of your ego that you're ready. This is your path now. And then it's been my path since then. And that was about 8 years ago. And there's even more in between, from closing my woodworking shop, closing that business, to then traveling to Peru to find my teacher, to, doing a lot in between. But that's the bird's eye summary of about the last 16 years.
Wow. And so you were able to get straight before ayahuasca.
Yeah, I was. And man, that sucked, but it taught me a lot about the mind.
Yeah.
And I was addicted to heroin for about 2 years, and I like through Healthy San Francisco, like I had like Suboxone, which was like an opiate blocker, which allows you to just like have sober time and drug addict time. And I like managed that for a couple of years, and then I totally melted down. I lost control. Yeah. Like the addiction took me over, and I was like shooting crack at the same time. And like I'm just so grateful. Like my veins have grown back, and that like I'm okay, and that like my mind came back. That my nervous system is mostly good now, but just those 2 years were pretty devastating. But yeah, I was just at my parents' house, thought I had no friends in the world. Actually, that's really funny. Like right before I melted down, I was going to join the guys that started Robinhood in New York before it became Robinhood. Kind of a funny Silicon Valley plug. And I don't know if I would have wrecked them, like totally like made them crash and burn, but I love being a part of that story, and just I love those guys and what they've done, and I've been rooting for them.
So you guys were friends from college, right?
Yeah, they're friends of mine, and but love just also what my experience has been and the life I've had. You said renegade anthropologist. I studied anthropology in school, which was like very, problematic, or very impersonal, or very just like didn't really have a deep respect for the people it studied. And instead, by renegade anthropologist, we'll just say respectful anthropologist, even just someone who I've just made relationships with indigenous people. And that's really helped me.
So what was the impact of ayahuasca for you, like in your life, that second time that you did it? You started doing ceremonies, sitting in them, and then eventually leading them, right? Or like helping facilitate. And then, so like what made you, like, how did it improve your life? How did it change your life, maybe for good and bad?
Oh, that's a pretty much almost only good. I got to be honest. Like most of the good things in my life came from that medicine, or that, from ayahuasca as a medicine and a teacher. Yeah, these are such like good, inspiring questions. So I'm sorry I'm going in a lot of directions. But I mean, I was like really devastated and had so much hatred for myself after this whole experience of like feeling like I had so much potential and then like melting down and wrecking it. And of just having all these like bad attitude personality defects that led me to that.
Yeah.
Right. Like there wasn't like a cause like, oh, this happened to me, so then I became addicted to heroin or this or that. Like, or it's because of heroin's no, that actually has nothing to do. It was personality defects. It was like ways that I had a bad attitude, ways that I was selfish, ways that I was caught in patterns of guilt and shame and doing things that created those habits of guilt and shame, like of not being good enough, of not being unworthy, of kind of glamorizing suffering.
Yeah.
And my own suffering in my own way, and creating narratives to justify my own suffering, like ego stories, right? Ayahuasca helped me have the wherewithal to recognize and talk about these things that as they're not me.
Yeah.
To actually separate them from me and to heal my mind and to make me realize like, hey, I'm good. Like, and maybe at first to make it be like, oh, it was all meant to be or like this, but actually just to let me integrate it and forget it.
Yeah.
Just like that was my journey that led me to here. And that is part of like the bargains I made. Like when I was, I mean, okay, so like I had the experiences I had, but when I was like 20, my parents were like, you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be a lawyer. And I was like, I'm going to be a homeless poet. All I want is wisdom. And that kind of happened. And wisdom can come with a price. But what did ayahuasca do? It helped me heal my mind and my heart in terms of just being okay with myself, forgiving myself, forgiving others, getting out of this, just all of these like traps of ignorance that exist around my mind, in my ego, my analytical mind, and helped me really be, and then over time has really helped me really be able to show up for other people.
Yeah, talk more about that, because I mean that's something that I think has really changed for myself. Is that really going from a primarily self-centered person to maybe like somewhere in the, like not all the way swung to the other side where it's like I only put other people first, but somewhere in a more balanced position. Mm-hmm. And I'm curious how it's, you went from being the recipient of plant medicine to, facilitating for others and really being somebody who I see as, someone who does show up for other people. I really recognize that, and I've witnessed that in a way that I didn't know you before, and so don't take this the wrong way, but it seems like you've grown into that versus like you were always like that. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that's which is awesome in a way that's like even more impressive.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, Justin. And I mean, I didn't know short hair Justin. Yeah. As well as I know long hair Justin. Long hair Justin, I see how he genuinely is trying to help other people, and I appreciate the ways you've helped me out. And so like, I mean, that's the journey of okay. I mean, that's like the core of it, right? The core of actually being able to help someone else is to be able to show up to help somebody else, and not because of your idea of being a helper of someone else. Yeah. Right. And that there's like whole realms of gradient, right? There's people that drink ayahuasca once and are like, okay, I got it. I'm supposed to be a shaman. I need to like give this to people. I need to change my mom. I need to change my dad. I need to change my ex-girlfriend. I need to fix all them. Like I saw like the vision of like what I need to do to them and how they need to be changed. That is not helping anybody. That's not helping anybody. Somebody that's got that attitude. And ayahuasca, like we're talking about it, and it's like this medicine, this psychoactive medicine, as well as like a teacher, as well as a subtle and beautiful thing to actually talk about. But it exists within a path, or in the ways I know it, through like the path of curanderismo, of shamanism. But I use the word curandero rather than shaman. Within these different indigenous paths, or even like pan-Peruvian paths, mestizo paths, what it does is there's processes that occur and that you go through periods of kind of fasting, called dieting, and that help you kind of develop spiritual strength, have like this place where you have a lot of spiritual tests, where you kind of clear out your subconscious, you become more of a free will, and more self-directed in your will. And of course, people learn songs and, music and all kinds of those things more than me. I don't really know that much music, but during that process, like the healing or being a healer within this tradition is not actually like, oh, hey, I'm Matthew, or hey, this is Tom, or hey, this is, Enrique or whatever, or whoever, whatever name we're going to show up. And this person's a healer and they have the power and they're healers. It's actually processes of incorporating the teachings of those plants so that their healing energy comes through you. And I mean, for myself, like I don't necessarily feel like I'm a healer, or that I have all that kind of power. There were a lot of times when I was early in the path that I really was like convinced of it, right? I just feel I'm just so aware of my humanness. I'm so aware of the limits of my knowledge, but trust in my own mind to think about something and get to the best answer. And I'll also, I feel like for the most part, if just available, that if someone needs my help, I can show up and do it.
Yeah.
And I don't think about it. I don't see myself in the mirror, like showing up to help them, or at least not very often. And that's kind of what's developed, and like, there's other subtler aspects. Somebody starts telling me about something they're struggling with, maybe my inspiration seeing solutions. But, yeah, that's what the journey, or what this path as a spiritual path teaches. It teaches you through healing yourself and through understanding healing, understanding God, understanding regeneration, renewal, making things right, and then turning yourself into a tool that takes things that are broken and fixes them. Turning yourself into a tool that takes things out of alignment and brings them into alignment, whether in just subtle ways or in very profound ways. And being able to do that with less and less ego about it, and doing that as just a role, as a job, as a duty, and not an external personality and projection, or for the adulation of others, or for someone to say that to you,
All right, guys, quick commercial break. Today, my video is brought to you by Magic Mind. Magic Mind is a energy shot that you take in the morning alongside or in replacement of your morning coffee, and it gives you consistent, clean energy throughout the day. If you're an entrepreneur or creative in need of that mental boost, then Magic Mind's for you. It's something I take every day. In fact, I love it so much that I invested in the company. My friend James started this company a couple of years ago to solve his own problem, and he's really built a product that I think is amazing. If you want to try Magic Mind out, you can get 20% off with my discount code Justin20 at magicmind.co. I really like Magic Mind because it gives me great energy throughout the day. It's filled with adaptogens and nootropics that help you focus and make you relax, and it tastes great. Once again, if you want to try it out, go to magicmind.co and enter the code Justin20. I'll link it in the description below. Thanks. So, okay, I want to switch gears a little bit because I think a lot of my audience is like not even going to know what ayahuasca is. So like, what is the experience of ayahuasca, and like I know there's no one experience, right?
Yeah.
But what's like the range of experiences that people have? And like, or maybe even before that, like, why do people sit?
Mm-hmm.
And like, when should they sit? And then what is the experience?
Okay. I think to answer this well, like I'm going to have to like have some run-on sentences here.
Yeah.
Okay. So first, ayahuasca is two plants.
Yeah.
It's a plant called ayahuasca, which is a vine called Banisteriopsis caapi, and then another plant called Psychotria viridis, which has DMT. So the vine has an MAOI as well as antimicrobial, anti-cancerogenic, purgative, anti-parasitic properties. All kinds of tremendous healing properties are in this vine. And then a leaf which contains dimethyltryptamine. And the vine makes the dimethyltryptamine in that leaf bioactive when you drink it. And then working on all these other things. So it like provides a visionary experience. The mystery of what occurs like through that molecule of DMT and through ayahuasca, like that's a mystery, right? Why do people sit? So rewind. Like, it's kind of a recent thing that non-shamans want to drink this medicine.
Yeah.
That non-curanderos want to drink this medicine. Like, since like William S. Burroughs was like searching for the thing to help him kick heroin, you know, and going into the jungle seeking out Yahweh, and then travelers in the like 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, and now like the full-fledged like ayahuasca ecotourism business that exists within, you know, Peru, Brazil, and elsewhere. You know, the medicine was traditionally mostly just drank by the curandero, by the healer.
Yeah.
And I've been in indigenous villages where like they're still operating like this. Like the shaman drinks the medicine, he has a ceremony, and then there are people that, you know, are fighting with their wives, or like a child that's having nightmares, all kinds of different things, but things that are like of discord, disalignment, of disharmony within people's lives, within the immediate community of the shaman, as well as I think especially in the past when there wasn't Western medicine or that option, disease, illness, malaria, yellow fever, things like that. People that were sick would come in, the shaman would drink the medicine, chant to them, sing to them, and bring things into alignment in these subtle ways, and then maybe give them a prescription of habits to follow. Okay, no salt, no pork, no, you know, eat just this, eat just plantains and a little fish each day. And then I'm going to give you like a plant, like a tea that you take for a few days. And like, you know, and this is like, there's a couple books where you can kind of get some of this historical perspective within the awesomeness of a narrative story, but it's true. They're by F. Bruce Lamb, and the books are Wizard of the Upper Amazon and Rio Tigre and Beyond. Yeah. And they're about a curandero, a mestizo curandero, who was trained by some indigenous people that kidnapped him while he was a rubber tapper, and actually talks about his training, and then talks about his experience then treating people like in Iquitos. But anyways, that's how it used to be. It used to be like shamans would take it to diagnose and treat other people. And then essentially Western people, for the most part, were interested in like what this experience provides. Like, this sounds really powerful. And compared to other psychedelics, ayahuasca is probably the least predictable. Yeah. You know, like I mean, okay, I tell people before they take it, like, okay, basically anything you can imagine doing, anything that happens and that can possibly happen is totally normal. Okay. Anything that possibly happens is totally normal. And, you know, but also absolutely anything can happen. And so from sitting in the dark all night, just watching your thoughts and being like, I don't know, I don't like this, to like total visionary, you know, 3D, like cartoon worlds, to very specific images from your own life, to purging, cleaning, crapping, like to, I mean, I've known of people where cancer spontaneously disappear. Where someone's diagnosed with a cancer, they have a tumor before a ceremony, and then a couple weeks later it's gone. Yeah. I've heard of that. And basically it's everything that a human being can experience in a intensified way, like through the mind and body, and that we can experientially imagine happening through ourselves, through the mind and body, with leaving this like little opening for just miracles to happen. So at the very least, it, you know, what happens, you know, how do we describe what happens when someone has like a drink, right? Well, it depends on the person a little bit, but like, you know, we can kind of say what the feeling's like. Or if someone eats like, you know, has a rose, you know, has like a adaptogenic tincture or whatever, like actually what happens is like kind of in the mystery of that person and their experience, and is mostly about them, what they went and did, etc. And that's kind of how ayahuasca is. Like, what it's going to do is not necessarily, it's not like this thing that this externalized thing that possesses you, you know? Although, I mean, if someone wants to believe that, that can totally happen. But it is like
more something that was revealing what's on the inside in the subconscious.
Yeah. And
of the individual.
Yeah. It can like, it's like a microscope, a magnifying glass, a mirror for all the different aspects of a person, from their conscious mind to their subconscious mind, to their deep emotional states and truths, to their anxieties, fears, hopes, dreams, prayers, intentions. And this is how this medicine, you know, in those 6,000 user experiences, man, maybe only a handful of times does someone be like almost I'm saying like 99.9% of the time, everybody's like, oh, I got exactly what I asked for. I got exactly what I needed. Because it's just, it's following you.
So what is that, like what are maybe, I know that the experiences aren't really banded and they're all different, but what are some notable user experiences that you could relay for like how somebody had a impactful experience in their life?
I mean, let's talk about yours. I think that's like I think just to pull someone else out. Yeah, let's talk about yours. I think that's maybe probably the best way to illustrate it if you're willing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I've talked about it before. Okay. So my experience, which I think I've told on this podcast, but I'll do it again, is 3.5 years ago now. I came randomly with a friend of mine who organized a weekend with you and your teacher, and I had no idea what to expect. My wife and I both came, and we had no idea what to expect. It was pretty funny because we kind of walk in. I remember you were wearing a Robin Hood hoodie at the moment that I walked in this house that we were going to do it at, and I was like, this is some Silicon Valley shit right here. I was like, is this legit or what? Like, I don't, but we ended up sitting, and I had no idea what to expect. And there's, there's all this language around, anything you do, but specifically around ayahuasca. It's like, okay, we're going to start the ceremony and you can have a second cup if you, don't feel anything by this time, or if you could imagine going up and getting a second cup, you can have a second cup at this time. And like all this language, like we had no idea what any of it meant. Right. Yeah. So at around 9 p.m., we sit in a circle in this living room, and after kind of an intro and welcome and some cleansing of the room, one at a time, we kind of go up and have a cup, and I tasted it. I'm not a personal fan of the taste, but I guess it grows on you as you said. But like and I sit down and then listen to the Icaros for a couple. Or first there's silence, right? Mm-hmm. There's silence for like 30 minutes. So we just sat in silence for like 30 minutes. And then there's some Icaros, like traditional songs and or chants. And at a certain point, I'm like, I don't feel anything. Mm-hmm. Like I was like, this isn't working for me. And I remember you said like, okay, if anybody would like to come up and have a second cup, you can come up. And so I like get up immediately. I'm like the first one, run to the front of the room. And you asked me like, what do you feel, Justin? And I'm like, I don't feel anything. And so, your teacher kind of eyeballed me and like poured some more in a cup and then handed me a cup. I drink it, sit down, and within minutes, immediately, I just, boom, I had like the wildest night I've ever had in my entire life. I clearly, the second part wasn't active yet. So it was like, I probably didn't need that, but like, it was maybe exactly what I needed. And the experience was like 3 movies that were all cut, like the scenes from 3 movies, but all out of order and cut together, spliced together, And one was kind of like that cartoon land you were talking about. I was like, felt like I was in Tron. We're sitting in a room that's pitch black, but it felt all lit up. Like there was almost like there were neon lights and like spiritual geometries and visualizations, and I'm just flying through this room. It felt like an alien city or something like that. And then the second was like the scenes from my life, like Justin therapy hour. Like I had people in my life, like my mom, my dad, brothers, wife appear in front of me and just, I'd be like working out all my issues, right? Like screaming at my dad, then I'd get through that, and then there was my mom, and then got through that, and then this cascading parade of people, and then the last one was feeling just incredibly sick, or like this. It was almost like the movie A Perfect Storm, right? I felt like I was on this boat in the middle of a horrific storm in the ocean, and I felt super nauseated and sick, and I'm throwing up in this bucket, or like gagging into this bucket, and felt like it's kind of like my whole stomach, intestine, like esophagus, mouth, and this bucket were like one organism. I'm just designed to like throw up liquid. And I remember at one point I was rocking back and forth, like screaming, like I like completely losing it. And you came over and said, Justin, I think it was pretty loud. And you were like, Justin, people are worried about you. You're making a lot of noise. Like, you're okay. You've got this. You're a strong person. And then you said, take a deep breath. And I took a breath, and it felt like the first breath I'd taken in 1,000 years. Mm-hmm. And I instantly went from the worst I'd ever felt in my life to the very calm, like this very serene, calm place. And I'll remember that moment forever, because ever since then, anytime I've been in a position where things have been chaotic, or there's something in the external world that's really difficult or chaotic, I remember that I have this deep reserve of calm inside me that's like completely irrelevant to the outside world. It's like completely, it doesn't have anything to do with the outside world. So for me, the net impact, this was like kind of crazy. And I remember waking up and being like you at a certain point, you come around and you said, okay, we're going to close the ceremony now. And I'm lying there with my arm through the wrong hole of my jacket. Like, I had like flu-like symptoms. I've sweat through all my clothes. I'm like shivering. And I'm just like, I have no idea what he's talking about. Like, can you sit up? And I'm like, no. Like, I can't. I'm just lying on the ground, like dead. And then people are coming by, you close the ceremony, people are eating food now because everyone's been fasting. They come by and they like look at me. My friends are looking at me like, are you okay? You seemed like you had a rough one. And then a couple of hours later, I crawl back to my tent with my wife, and we're like, we got to get out of here. Like, I don't know why anyone signs up for this.
What did this dude in the Robin hoodie do to me?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I was poisoned. Like, I don't even, like, I have no, like, why do people do this? And then the funny thing is, we were like, okay, we're going to sleep, because we can't drive back to, back home right now. We're going to sleep. And then we slept, woke up, and then we're kind of over the course of the day, we felt a little bit better. People were like, hey, it's different every time, kind of, we were convinced to stay for the second time, which was pretty much the same, to be honest for me. But then, I guess the main impact wasn't so much this like experience, other people.
It was the second movie.
Yeah. It wasn't so much that experience of like what happened during the ceremony, which, was pretty crazy and like a very difficult experience for me. But it was more what I took away from that and integrated into my life over time, the primary thing of which was like the realization that everything I'd ever done in my adult life, I'd done for the approval of other people. And while I could love that person and accept that, and it had benefited me in many different ways, it wasn't necessarily how I had to live my life moving forward. And that was a big fundamental change for me, because I'd always been driven to like do more and win more and have a bigger company and manage more people or whatever, all these ego-driven things. And I think it helped me make the shift more towards intrinsic motivation and deeper connection with the people around me, And so it was very non-intuitive, I guess, that it would work like that, but it was a very powerful experience for me.
Yeah. Justin, thank you for sharing all that.
So is that normal or?
Actually, okay, your experience is unique to you.
Yeah.
But absolutely normal.
Yeah.
First of all, whatever your experience would have been normal. But while you were talking, I just was feeling again like this truth of like what this path is, or what this medicine does, or what these medicines are supposed to do, or what spiritual work is supposed to do. So they're supposed to make us more free.
Yeah.
Like, liberate us from karma. Like, what does that mean? Like, it's about, we have all of these just habits or patterns or ways that we're acting that isn't necessarily our choice. It just became part of our program. What we want to be, what I want for others, and what I think I want for myself, is for us to be as free as possible in our consciousness, choosing who we want to be, what we want to do, and really understanding what makes us fulfilled and what gives us the most meaning and value to our lives.
Yeah.
And I think that's the goal, and that's the growth. And getting there is healing. Like, I asked you to tell your whole story, and because I felt like for anyone, it's going to be unique to them and what changes they need to go through to get to this place of healing. And healing isn't picking true or false. Healing isn't picking between some ideas you have beforehand. Healing, if it's not, is going to a new place. It's growth.
Yeah.
And for you, you know, when you were saying what's the experience about, or what does it do? You know, there's the physiological stuff and like the vomiting, you know, and that can have like, I think, a lot of deep meaning and connection to things, and of just moving out energy or cleaning people physically. Like, I mean, this medicine heals disease. And then, you know, there's the visionary stuff, which is really cool too. But what's really important is the dialogue inside, and like the visions we have. And visions aren't necessarily to be taken literally unless they are, and you know if they are. Screaming at your dad, why aren't you proud of me? That's a vision you take literally. And that's the sort of vision that's in the realm of visions with this medicine. That is what it's really about having.
Yeah.
Because that was getting and illustrating to you one of the deepest truths of your life to that point. And that was also causing the most of your suffering. Because there's not a place at which you have just like, you know, $1 billion of approval of other people, right? And then it's just like, good, I'm rich in approval of others. Like it doesn't work until you're like, oh no, like I just dig who I am and like what I'm gonna do today.
Yeah.
And the relationships I'm gonna have. So I mean that's the process. And that's what I think for you now, going into this work, if you were to have more, you wouldn't have that same experience that's been done. Someone else that had was in a similar place to short hair Justin, maybe would have an experience like that. But other people, it is all these different ways of healing, of clearing, of getting new realization and understanding that ultimately should be bringing us to greater freedom and also connection to ourselves and to others, and just knowing ourselves. And how that takes shape, how that happens, the diversity is endless. I mean, just one other thing I'll say is like, when people like have their first time and then they're going to go have their second time, they're like, oh, well, is it going to be just like my first time? I'm just like, all right, you kind of like, that's almost impossible. Like you get like 20 to 50 first times. Yeah. Where it's just going to be completely brand new. And then over time, it becomes a very familiar place with that medicine. But because it's teaching you all these different aspects of how that medicine works with you and your consciousness.
So how do you, like, what happens in a ceremony, you know, for people? Like there's obviously this experience on the inside, but like, can you talk a little bit about, you know, the actual mechanics of it and why it's that way?
Okay. So that's kind of a hard question to answer, because there's so many different traditions, like legitimate traditions that work with this medicine in a ceremonial context.
Or actually, maybe I'll start with a different question. Why even do a ceremony versus like, why don't people, and I've actually heard of this, like just take ayahuasca, you know, by themselves, or like with, you know, in a non-ceremonial context?
Because I think your mind can be damaged. Yeah. Yeah. I think your mind, and maybe if you believe in the spirit, I definitely do, could be damaged from that. Like what I was gonna get to is like saying how a ceremony works and the goals of any individual ceremony and how they're gonna operate it. There's a lot of diversity, but there's one thing in common. It's always opened with a prayer and closed with a prayer. And everything that happens in between is good. Yeah. And it's important also, like, you know, like, people are like, oh, well, you can just go take mushrooms and like have an experience, and like maybe there's bad trips, maybe there's good trips, and like, you know, but it's all going to be okay. This medicine's not like that. Yeah. What can occur is so broad. And the reason why we can't have that guy who sat 2 times and is like, I'm going to heal my mom, I'm going to heal my dad, I'm going to heal my ex-girlfriend, is because the spaces that are opened up within the subconscious, the conscious, the emotions, all of it happening all at once with intensity, right? Like, as you were talking about 3 like movies, like all shot together, right? It's actually working at that level of like all these different parts of ourselves all at once, particularly that place in our subconscious, that place that's like not quite the dreams, but the dreams. And these subtle worlds that like I'm beginning to get more and more understanding of. But even after 500 experiences, I'm just scratching the surface of what's really possible with this medicine and how it's working. Yeah. And how, because it's like the secrets of the human spirit is how this medicine is working. and the human mind and consciousness and being. If someone is giving this medicine to other people without experience, what's likely to happen is just somebody will have a reaction in a way and they won't know how to respond to it, or they'll respond to someone's reaction in a way that is going to be more harmful than good. You know, like someone's like sitting in the room screaming, oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck, and shaking back and forth, and you grab them and like, hey, stop it, right? That would have been horrible, right?
Yeah.
But like a lot of people maybe without experience would have done that. And, you know, so why does it have to be in a ceremonial context? Because that's the context that it exists in. And like, I think that's a good thing, that this is the archaeological, the evidence that exists, for the use of this medicine, basically cups recovered that have residue of the medicine in it, goes back about 2,000 years. And we know that other Amazonian medicines that are used alongside ayahuasca, like different snuffs that are made out of tobacco and ash from different trees, go back even further. Humans have been using this for a long time. And as we can say, like, well, was mathematics invented in the year 2000? No. Like, mathematics is something that's been progressively built on.
Yeah.
Western medicine originating from the Greeks, like Egyptians, etc. Like Western medicine has been something evolving for 2,000-3,000 years. This is a medicinal system that likewise has been evolving with people, and people in certain ways in terms of like, you know, they didn't have like metals and metal technology and blades in the same way, but in terms of their understanding of this medicine, the indigenous peoples, the level of technology and awareness is very high. From even being able to combine these two different plants from the most incredibly biodiverse place in the world, that then make this experience is a miraculous thing. And then how that ayahuasca is like the an encyclopedia of healing plants that can literally address anything, and particularly things Western medicine can't address now. So what I'm saying is that why don't you use it just outside of a ceremonial context, or just use it or order it from the internet? It'd be a really bad idea. Even just ceremonies with someone that has a lot of experience, and with people, and in a safe container and in a safe place, and it's not that well held, or there's someone that's really or someone's, really acting out of line in a way that's really disturbing for everybody else, can be deeply affecting. And so if you just take it and then just like life bombards you in some way, you just take it and you're like, I'm going to walk around Santa Monica.
Yeah.
There's so many like opportunities for something to really spin out or have a traumatic experience due to the sensitivity of all these different parts of yourself that you're maybe not fully aware of what's being opened up and worked on. And then not understanding then how to put that back.
Yeah.
I mean, just one last thought is like, remember in the like, in the era of like LSD in the 60s and 70s, how many of these great cultural icons that were using LSD and creating so much incredible art and culture, right? And new stuff. How many of them had tragic deaths? So many of them had tragic deaths. And how or why, I'm not going to speculate on right here, but there's a reason why these things are best in a ceremonial context where it's always held by a prayer. It's always held by a prayer to God. And particularly where there's a lineage, there's a tradition, and there's a path, right?
Yeah.
Because the path will take you somewhere.
Yeah, it's interesting. Before I ask a question, because, I'm like the short-haired Justin would have been like, no, I don't get it. What's the ceremony? Like, what's the point of it? But having gone through it, I'm like, oh, having that tradition and training of the curanderos to like know how to facilitate for people or like sit for people, hold space for people is really impactful. And, doing it in the dark, right? Like that's a tradition that helps you be introspective, right? To like learn to not be distracted maybe by the outside world and to go inside and to learn about yourself more. And so I guess I'm a believer, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the right context to do it. But I want to like kind of explain that to, someone who maybe doesn't have the context.
Yeah. Or someone that doesn't have the respect, right?
Yeah. Or they're coming in with if you don't have no context, then it's hard to have respect for it.
Yeah, exactly. But if it's like, oh, this is a psychedelic.
Right.
I'm going to take it. Like I can take psychedelics. I've taken plenty of psychedelics. And it's like, well, this isn't a psychedelic. That's not, those of us that have a relationship with it refer to it. It's a medicine. It's a teacher. And it's part of a spiritual path. And when, like in the path of spiritual growth, like I really believe there's like three things that are like kind of like the toolkit, like the hammer, screwdriver, and like tape measure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, four things. But humility, sincerity, respect, and integrity.
Yeah.
And I think these are the things that are necessary for spiritual growth and change. Because otherwise, if we don't have those things, our ego's just going to get in the way and co-opt things. It's going to colonize things, colonize the experience. And, why does this, if someone feels like they should take this medicine outside of any sort of ceremonial context, that's on them. If they find the means and wherewithal to do it, it's on them. And there's a reason why not many people do it, because most people will learn that's not the way to do it if they go try that. So like there's a reason people aren't doing that,
So what are reasons, that leads me to another question, which what are reasons why someone shouldn't take ayahuasca?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So the one fundamental reason is, so this medicine is really safe. Like people have the death experience all the time. There's nothing in this medicine to kill you. But people have the death experience all the time because their consciousness gets shifted and in terms of their awareness and their sense of identity can kind of become pulled away and they think they're dying. Okay, that's not dying. This medicine almost never kills people. However, because it's an MAOI, there are certain medications that if you take are not good. Like particularly antidepressants, anything that interacts with an MAOI, certain painkillers, muscle relaxers, like can be near fatal. So it's not all prescription medications, but certain medications that have an interaction with an MAOI can be very dangerous to have. And likewise, people that have diagnosed mental illness. I know there are shamans out there, or I've heard of them, that will work with people and maybe work with them without ayahuasca, with just them taking ayahuasca and working on them and giving them maybe other plants and working on it through the paradigm of their understanding of mental illness, whether it's removing bad spirits or whatever. But if someone has mental illness, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, this is not the medicine for fixing it. Because it can create those sort of episodes. If someone has anxiety, severe anxiety, crippling depression, if they're off the medication, I've seen this medicine time and time again permanently heal people of those things. I've known many, many people who have consulted with their doctors, gotten off those medications well before ceremony, like a month or more before, or many months before, struggled through it, come and had the ceremony, and then never went back on their medication. Actually, I don't really know anyone that's fully detoxed, had ceremony, and then gone back on to these medications. It's liberated people from these medications by actually treating their mind through the nuts and bolts of their mind and what's causing this anxiety, this displeasure, this dissatisfaction, this depression. Okay, so that's one side, like the safety side. The other thing is like trust is so vital for this medicine, and to trust the people facilitating the ceremony and to trust the situation that you're in. So I think that people shouldn't Google this medicine and then figure out where to go find it through the internet. Find some people and trust and go work with the people they recommend. If you're going to go to South America, have it come through a recommendation, through someone who trusts or someone who's just like ideally really grounded, but like you, and that you can relate with and you trust that they're going to take care of you and they have your good intentions. Because there's a lot of people, especially with the ecotourism side of ayahuasca in South America, there's a lot of exploitative people down there, and particularly with women. But so trust, and then you have to really choose to do it. Why should someone not do it? Well, you shouldn't do it if you're doing it because someone told you should. You shouldn't do it to go along with a group of friends. Like with trust, the other vital ingredient is that you feel in your heart that this is something you want to do.
Yeah.
And that you chose, and you take full responsibility for taking the little cup of that like bitter to sweet brown liquid, and drinking it, that you are wholly responsible for it. And you did it because you knew there's something good. Something in your heart called you to it. Because if you don't, then it's really easy to get in a negative space or get in that place of bitterness or distrust. Like these are the like little things that can like make make someone's experience kind of like run off the rails sometimes, which isn't too often or is usually only very temporary. But when people get in that place of distrust or like, I didn't want to do this, you know? And then the third is just, you know, I think, why should someone not do it if you're not sincere about it? Like if you're actually just like, yeah, I just want to just go take it just to have the experience, you know, I'll take it and just cruise around my favorite park, you know, like that's not good. You should meet it with sincerity. So yeah, safety, trust, your own volition and sincerity, I think are the ingredients that should be met for anyone deciding to take this medicine. And if they're not met, you shouldn't.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think we're coming up on our time. Do you have any final thoughts on this medicine for people? You know, people out there. I think a lot of my audience is like, you know, they heard my story or like other people's, and they're curious, you know, but probably haven't experienced it before. And I know, like I like Tim Ferriss's podcast, and Tim always says ayahuasca is like knee surgery. You know, like you only want to do it if you're like, you know, it's a serious consideration. You know, it's like a very serious undertaking. And so, you know, I don't want to trivialize. Like it was one of the most difficult experiences I've ever had in my life, but very impactful for me. But not something like every time I sit for a ceremony, I feel anxiety, you know, because I'm like, this is not easy. It's not fun. It's not like, I mean, it could be fun, but it's not necessarily going to be fun. And so, yeah, do you have any final thoughts for people?
So yeah, two things I'd like to say. The first is, okay, what everyone tells you about ayahuasca, that's going to be hard, you're going to be puking, you're going to be this, just ignore it. Like if you know this is something that you want to do, like if you know this is something you want to do and it's good for you, and there's a good thing for you, or there's an answer there, or there's something that you want to fix or address, or you just feel it calling to you. Like I did, like I didn't have anything I knew I needed fixing, right?
Yeah. When
I was 19, and I just knew I knew I wanted to try it. And somehow the opportunity presented itself. It's like that. You know, I feel like, because a lot of people like have tough experiences. Some people have tough experiences that are also the most wonderful experience of their life. And some people just like freaking love it, start to finish. You know, for everyone, it's different. And for a lot of people, and I hope that with decriminalization, that maybe if there is decriminalization or more acceptance of it, that it won't be like kind of clinical psychedelic assisted therapy stuff, because that's not appropriate for it. The range of outcomes with this medicine is not predictable. And the training and the tradition is important. But this medicine can be used to fix all kinds of things and can be an entrance point to healing all kinds of disease that within our culture are rampant, right? Mental diseases, or just coming from dissatisfaction, ennui, nihilism, disconnection, lack of faith, lack of trust in yourself, like just weakness in your spirit, in your mind. On one side, infertility issues, you know, autoimmune issues, cancers. The Amazonian medicines, they have endless medicines to heal these things. Like people have children late in life compared to what we understand, and rarely have problems having children. You know, people are vital and strong, like inflammation and pain. Like these people are working their whole lives, having traumatic injuries and stuff, healing from them and continuing to work till they're very old in a traditional context of without, you know, too much influence of Western diet. So there's incredible answers within these traditions, within this medicine and within its way. And I think the one final thing I want to just say or encourage is like, I kind of owe my life to the people that have kept this knowledge alive and this way alive and created this path, that have hacked out the path through the jungle for me, that I've been able to walk with them. I've been able to know many, many different indigenous leaders, mostly indigenous leaders, in North America and South America, and healers, and learn from them. And they're walking a path that was handed down to them, that's already been hacked out. Like this medicine, and then all the knowledge that it connects to and the systems of knowledge that it works with is something that's existed for a long time. And these people kind of have a patent to it.
Yeah.
And that if people have received something good from this medicine, from ayahuasca, or if they want to receive something good from it, I think having a relationship of reciprocity is very important. And finding ways to give back to the people of the Amazon, really feeling a sense of alliance or solidarity with the people of the Amazon and their struggles for sovereignty over their land, or reclaiming their traditional lands and protecting their water, protecting their forests, protecting their way of life. Because first of all, they innately deserve it, as all of us do. It's their human right. And then secondly, they hold what can be a tremendous life-saving gift for a lot of us there. And they're taking care of it. And we want to encourage them to keep taking care of it. And I'm really grateful for the little bit that has been shared with me, and the openness that I've met among these people, among the different indigenous people, as well as non-indigenous people and teachers that I've had, and people who've really are dedicated and committed to helping others and working with this medicine in a sincere and good way. And also just am really always grateful to God and the incredible mercy and compassion and internal narrative of redemption that is always occurring within me. Incredible. And I think that's pretty much it. I just really hope that I just want to thank you, Justin, for giving me the opportunity to speak. And I really hope that I represented this medicine, myself, and my teachers and the indigenous people that I've been lucky enough to have direct relationships with, and represent them all in a good way. So thank you.
Amazing. Thanks.